Well, the worst part about owning rental property, and the thing that people are most scared of, and the thing that people who have gone through it would say is the absolute worst part, are evictions. And thankfully, when your property's been managed by Mesa, these are incredibly rare. We do, again, I think the best job in the industry on the front end of screening tenants, staying compliant with fair housing while also minimizing the risks that our owners take on. But they do unfortunately happen. Bad things happen to good people. We talk about the 3Ds: death, divorce, drugs. Unfortunately, those things can happen. And if they do, sometimes, not always, but sometimes it does lead to an eviction. The first step in the process is the 3-day notice to pay rent or quit. You serve that, it demands the rent. It has to be done in a very specific way, which we have more information on in other articles on our website. But you demand the rent in writing. The tenant then has 3 days, not including weekends and holidays, to pay the rent that is due. If they do not, you are then able to file what is called the unlawful detainer. That's the point that we would bring an attorney into the picture who would take the lease, the 3-day notice, any other evidences that we have, and they would file a lawsuit in court. And it's handled somewhat similar to small claims, except you can have an attorney there, but it's heard in a courtroom where it's essentially the judge, the bailiff, the eviction attorney, maybe the tenant if they show up, and the property manager. And for the owners that are having their homes managed by Mesa, you stay just as uninvolved through this process as you have through other processes. If you live out of state or out of country, you don't have to come back to do this. Our property management agreement allows us to act on your behalf in situations like this. And so we're able to represent you in the court proceedings. And we have a very, very good eviction attorney who has won all of our cases to date. And so he does a really good job of presenting the facts and the evidence and obtaining what is called a writ of possession, which is the favorable outcome of a eviction. Is the judge awards possession of the property from the tenant, who has legal possession by way of the lease, back to the owner. And unfortunately, that is not the end of it at that point, because you have to wait several more weeks for the sheriff to actually come and perform the lockout. And then you meet them at the property and they will remove the tenant if they're still there, and we change the locks. And just like that, the house has been returned to you. And this is scary because 1, evictions take a really long time. 2, they can be expensive. And 3, oftentimes, at least the fear is that when a tenant's being evicted, they are also destroying the home. And we haven't found that to necessarily always be the case, or even most of the time be the case, although usually the home is not as of good condition as you would want it to be, but it's not being actively, intentionally destroyed during this process. Again, bad things happen to good people, and that's oftentimes what happens in a situation like this. So the question that you should ask is not necessarily how does an eviction work, although it's important to know that, but what should I do to avoid an eviction? And most of this goes back to all of the things that we've talked about in previous videos, mostly around screening. How do you screen tenants? And are you doing a good job of catching fraud, catching eviction history, things like that on the front end, so that you can hopefully avoid these types of things from happening during the tenancy? Secondly, enforce the lease. Set standards at the beginning, and when tenants don't meet them, take the enforcement action that you say that you're going to, or that your lease says that you're going to. And third, I would say inspect regularly. A lot of the warning signs of an eviction are presenting themselves long before the tenant actually completely stops paying rent or violating the lease in some other way, to where now we have lawyers and courts involved and things like that. So pay attention to the warning signs so that you can file these or get ahead of these, or terminate the tenancy in the normal way before it comes to a court-ordered eviction. And finally, just to end on a happier note, I do want to try to encourage you, if you do have to go through an eviction, that you allow us to handle all of that drama for you. This happens in less than, well under 1% of tenants that we place. We have one of, if not the best eviction rate in the entire market that we manage properties in. So I would encourage you just to allow us to handle it. Oftentimes it does get a little bit dramatic with the claims that are being made by the tenant and the situation that they may be in. It can be very difficult, but it's not always the right thing to just give a little bit more time in cases like that. So please just rely on us to help you make those decisions and to handle any drama that may come up on your behalf. And then also just to zoom out. Just pull back, look at your investment as a whole. If you have a long-term mindset, then an eviction can just be a bump in the road towards what you want your rental property to be able to do for you. even when you own rental property that there is no rent income coming in on because of a non-paying tenant going through eviction, which again is incredibly rare, the underlying value of the asset remains. Especially in California, from what we've seen historically, appreciation just keeps on rolling, and that doesn't change just because there's no income for a period of time on the property. So just keep the big picture in mind. Remember that you're playing a long game and that the value of the asset that you own continues to hold its value and even appreciate in value even as you have to go through something like an eviction. So hopefully just a mindset shift can help you deal with some of the stress that comes with it, as well as letting us handle all of the details and the drama. And that way you really can own rental property without it owning you.